If you are over 60, there is something doctors are urgently trying to understand right now, because new research suggests your heart may be under the most stress at around 3 o'clock in the morning, while you think you are safely asleep. And what's frightening is that millions of older adults never feel a single warning sign before it happens. No pain, no panic, no emergency. They simply go to bed and never wake up. Most people believe sleep is the time the body recovers. But after 60, that may no longer be true if certain nighttime habits are quietly putting your cardiovascular system under pressure for hours before bed. In fact, studies now show that nearly half of fatal cardiac events in older adults happen between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. during the exact hours your heart is supposed to be resting. And researchers studying sleep apnea recently discovered something even more disturbing. Blood vessels in older adults appear to function worst around 3 a.m., especially when oxygen levels repeatedly drop during sleep. That means your heart may be entering its most vulnerable state at the exact moment you are least able to protect yourself. Tonight, I want to show you what is really happening inside the aging body after dark, and why some of the most harmless bedtime habits may be far more dangerous than anyone realized. For years, Richard believed his evenings were healthy. Every night after dinner, he would sit in his recliner, turn on the television, dim the room just enough to feel comfortable, and spend 2 or 3 hours watching the news before bed. He told his wife it helped him relax, helped him wind down. And honestly, I understand why so many people do this. After a long day, the brain craves comfort, familiar voices, bright screens, something distracting enough to quiet the stress of life for a few hours. But what many never realize is that the body does not interpret nighttime light the same way the mind does. A recent Harvard sleep study found that exposure to bright light late at night may increase cardiovascular disease risk by nearly 50% in older adults. 50%. And the reason has nothing to do with eyesight. It has everything to do with the aging heart. See, your brain operates on an internal clock called the circadian rhythm. As darkness falls, your body is supposed to release melatonin, lower cortisol, relax blood vessels, and prepare the cardiovascular system for repair. That process is one of the most protective biological functions your body has. But when televisions, phones, tablets, and bright lights stay on late into the evening, the brain receives a completely different signal. Stay alert, stay awake, stay stressed. I have seen this pattern repeatedly in my own patients. Their bodies looked exhausted, but their nervous systems never truly powered down. Heart rate stayed elevated, blood pressure remained. Unstable sleep became lighter, more fragmented, less restorative. And over time, the damage quietly accumulated night after night. Richard learned that reality the hard way. One morning around 4:15 a.m., his wife woke up and realized he was breathing strangely beside her. His heart was racing uncontrollably. In the emergency room, doctors discovered severe overnight arrhythmia episodes that had likely been building for months. What shocked him most was hearing the cardiologist ask a question no one had ever asked before. How much bright light are you exposed to before bed every night? That question changed everything for him. And what doctors are discovering next may be even more dangerous, because it changes the blood itself while you sleep. Elaine was 72 years old and proud of one thing more than anything else. She could sleep through the entire night without getting up once to use the bathroom. She would actually joke about it with her friends at church. While everyone else complained about waking up 2 or 3 times a night, Elaine saw it as proof that her health was still strong. Every evening around 6 p.m., she stopped drinking water completely. No tea, no water beside the bed, nothing. By the time she went to sleep, her body had already been slowly drying out for hours. What she didn't know was that after the age of 60, the body's thirst system changes dramatically. Older adults often become dehydrated long before they ever feel thirsty. The brain simply stops sending strong warning signals, and during sleep, when as blood pressure begins to dip, even mild dehydration can become far more dangerous than most people realize. Doctors now believe this may be one hidden reason so many strokes and cardiac events happen in the final hours before sunrise is that the body loses fluid overnight, making the blood thicker and more prone to clots. Concentrated, thick blood moves more slowly through aging arteries that are already narrower and less flexible than they once were. And slow-moving blood is far more likely to form dangerous clots. That risk becomes even worse overnight because the heart is pumping at a slower rate while the body remains motionless for hours at a time. A large cardiovascular study found that even mild dehydration significantly increased the risk of overnight stroke and heart complications in adults over 55. The danger was especially high between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., the exact period researchers now call the cardiovascular danger window. During those early morning hours, stress hormones begin rising rapidly as the body prepares to wake up. Blood pressure surges, heart rate increases, and if the blood has become too thick overnight, the stage may already be set for disaster. That is almost exactly what happened to Elaine. At 5:10 one morning, her husband woke up and noticed something strange. Elaine's right arm had slipped off the side of the bed, and when he tried speaking to her, her words sounded slurred and confused. She had suffered an ischemic stroke. Sometime before dawn, doctors later told the family that severe overnight dehydration had likely contributed to the clot that blocked blood flow to her brain. The terrifying part is that Elaine never felt sick before bed. No pain, no dizziness, no warning. She believed she was protecting her sleep by avoiding water at night. In reality, she may have been silently increasing the strain on her cardiovascular system every single evening for years. Many older adults make the exact same mistake because it feels logical. They fear interrupted sleep more than dehydration. But the body does not care about convenience. The heart cares about circulation. The brain cares about oxygen. And during sleep, when blood flow naturally slows, hydration becomes critically important. Cardiologists now recommend something surprisingly simple for many older adults: drinking a full glass of water 1 to 2 hours before bed, then using the bathroom immediately before lying down. A small habit may help the blood remain fluid enough to move safely through the arteries during the most vulnerable hours of the night. But dehydration is only part of the story, because doctors say the next condition may be silently suffocating millions of older adults every night without them ever realizing it is happening. For almost 10 years, Linda believed her snoring was nothing more than an annoying habit. Her husband used to laugh about it in the beginning. Then the laughter stopped. Some nights he would lie awake listening to her breathing suddenly go silent for several seconds before she gasped violently for air again. He begged her to talk to a doctor. But Linda refused. She kept saying the same thing so many people say. If I were really having trouble breathing, I'd know it. But that is exactly what makes sleep apnea so dangerous after the age of 60. Most people never realize it is happening because it happens while they are unconscious. Doctors now estimate that millions of older adults may stop breathing dozens or even hundreds of times every single night without ever remembering it in the morning. Each episode may last 10 seconds, sometimes 20, sometimes even longer. And every time oxygen levels crash, the body enters a state of emergency. Your brain panics. Stress hormones explode into the bloodstream. Blood vessels tighten suddenly. Heart rate surges violently, blood pressure spikes. Then breathing resumes, oxygen stabilizes briefly, and the entire cycle begins again. Imagine putting your heart through a miniature panic attack over and over again all night long while you believe you are peacefully asleep. That is why sleep apnea is a serious condition. Researchers from Johns Hopkins found that untreated sleep apnea may triple the risk of nighttime heart attacks and dramatically increase stroke risk in older adults. New research is even more alarming. Scientists studying overnight cardiovascular function discovered that blood vessels in people with sleep apnea appear to function worst around 3 a.m., the exact period many cardiologists now describe as the most dangerous window of the night for the aging heart. I have personally seen how silently this condition destroys people over time. Not always through one massive event, but through years of hidden strain that slowly weakens the cardiovascular system night after night. Many patients come in complaining of exhaustion, morning headaches, memory problems, or blood pressure that no medication seems able to control. And often, the real problem is not happening during the day at all. It is happening in the dark while they sleep. Linda finally agreed to a sleep study only after something terrifying happened. Around 4:20 in the morning, her husband woke up and realized she was making choking sounds beside him. Her lips had turned pale. Her breathing was stopping repeatedly for longer than usual. By the time paramedics arrived, her oxygen level had dropped dangerously low and her heart had fallen into an abnormal rhythm. Doctors later told the family she had come frighteningly close to sudden cardiac arrest. What shocked Linda most was hearing the specialist explain that this had probably been happening for years. And if you snore loudly, if you wake up exhausted no matter how long you sleep, if someone has ever told you they notice pauses in your breathing, you should not ignore that warning. Because your body may not be resting at night the way you think it is. You may be fighting for oxygen hundreds of times before sunrise without ever knowing it. The most frightening part is that many people with sleep apnea do not die suddenly. Instead, the condition quietly damages the heart over time until one night the body simply cannot compensate anymore. And what doctors are now discovering about bedroom temperature may make this overnight stress even worse. Walter believed warm rooms were good for older people. In fact, he had believed that his entire life. Every night before bed, he turned the thermostat up to nearly 75 degrees because he hated waking up cold. His bedroom felt cozy, safe, comfortable, and like many people over 60, he assumed warmth meant protection. But what he never realized was that while he slept peacefully under heavy blankets, his heart was quietly struggling all night long to cool his body down. This is one of the newest discoveries. Cardiologists and sleep researchers are now warning older adults about a growing number of studies that suggest sleeping in a room that is too warm may place significant stress on the body. Stress on the aging cardiovascular system during the exact hours the heart is supposed to recover. And the danger is subtle. You do not wake up gasping. You do not feel pain. You simply sleep in conditions that slowly force the body to remain physiologically stressed for hours. When bedroom temperatures rise too high, the body must continuously push heat outward through the skin to maintain a safe internal temperature. Blood vessels remain dilated, heart rate stays elevated, sweating increases fluid loss. And the deep restorative stages of sleep become lighter and more fragmented. Researchers recently found that older adults sleeping in warmer rooms experienced reduced heart rate variability overnight, one of the clearest signs that the cardiovascular system is under strain instead of recovery. In simple terms, your heart may never fully relax. I think this shocks many people because warmth feels comforting emotionally. But biologically, the aging body often handles heat far worse than younger people realize. After 60, temperature regulation becomes less efficient. The heart must work harder to move heat away from internal organs. And if dehydration, sleep apnea, or unstable or blood pressure already exist, that additional strain may quietly compound throughout the night. That is exactly what happened to Walter. For months, he had been waking up exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours every night. He noticed morning headaches, occasional dizziness, a pounding heartbeat before sunrise. But he blamed aging. Most people do. Then one summer morning around 5 a.m., Walter woke suddenly with crushing pressure in his chest. His breathing felt shallow. Sweat soaked through his shirt even though the patient felt comfortable to him. His wife called 911. In the emergency room, doctors discovered his blood pressure had surged dangerously high overnight while his heart rhythm became unstable. What surprised him most came later during cardiac rehabilitation. A sleep specialist asked him a question no doctor had ever asked before. How warm is your bedroom when you sleep? At first, Walter laughed. He thought the question sounded ridiculous. But researchers now believe bedroom temperature may directly influence overnight. Cardiovascular stress is a concern, especially in adults over 60. Rooms above roughly 72 degrees Fahrenheit may prevent the natural nighttime drop in heart rate and blood pressure that protects the body during sleep. And strangely enough, rooms that are too cold may also create danger. Extreme cold forces blood vessels to constrict sharply, increasing vascular resistance and forcing the heart to pump harder against narrowed arteries. In older adults with plaque buildup, that sudden pressure may increase the risk of heart attack or stroke before morning. That is why many sleep specialists now recommend keeping bedrooms between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Not because the heart appears to recover best in that range. And if you think this sounds too simple to matter, remember something important. Most dangerous nighttime cardiovascular stress does not come from one dramatic event. It comes from small biological pressures repeated night after night for years. But there is still one major trigger many people never feel happening at all, and it may explain why so many heart attacks occur shortly before sunrise. Thomas never understood why his cardiologist seemed so concerned about one small detail. What time do you take your blood pressure medication? To him, it felt unimportant. Some nights he took it after dinner, some nights before bed, Sometimes he forgot entirely and decided to take it the next morning instead. After all, he felt fine most of the time. No chest pain, no dizziness, nothing dramatic, and like many adults over 60, he believes serious cardiovascular problems always came with warning signs first, but the body does not. Always warn you loudly before something catastrophic happens, especially during the final hours of the night. What many people never realize is that blood pressure does not stay stable while you sleep. It follows a biological rhythm controlled by hormones, stress signals, and the body's internal clock. During healthy sleep, blood pressure is supposed to giving the heart and blood vessels time to rest and recover. Cardiologists call this nighttime dipping, and it is one of the most protective cardiovascular processes in the human body. But then something happens between roughly 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. The body begins preparing to wake up. Cortisol rises sharply, adrenaline increases, heart rate accelerates, blood pressure surges upward. Researchers call this the morning surge, and for older adults, it may become one of the most dangerous periods of the month, especially if blood pressure is uncontrolled while they sleep. You may feel completely peaceful in bed while your cardiovascular system is entering its highest pressure. That is why so many heart attacks and strokes happen shortly before sunrise. And for people whose medication has worn off overnight, or who skip doses entirely, the danger may become dramatically worse. Large clinical studies have shown that nighttime blood pressure control may be even more important than daytime numbers for preventing cardiovascular events. Some researchers now believe that taking certain blood pressure medications at bedtime instead of in the morning may significantly reduce overnight heart stress in some patients. Not for everyone, of course. Medication timing should always be discussed with a doctor. But the science surrounding overnight blood pressure has changed rapidly. In recent years, I have seen patients become genuinely frightened when they first understand this. They assume sleep means safety. But biologically, the final hours before waking may place enormous strain on aging arteries that are already stiffened by years of hypertension, inflammation, or plaque buildup. That strain becomes even more dangerous when combined with dehydration, sleep apnea, or poor sleep quality, the exact conditions millions of older adults experience every single night. Thomas learned this lesson in the worst. He had managed hypertension for nearly 12 years. Not perfectly, but well enough that he rarely worried about it anymore. His wife used to remind him about his. He took his pills constantly. Sometimes he listened, sometimes he shrugged it off and said, "Missing one night won't kill me." Then one winter morning around 4:40 a.m., she woke to a strange sound beside her. Thomas was trying to speak, but his words came out broken and confused. One side of his face had collapsed. By the time paramedics arrived, his blood pressure. In the evening, reduce television and phone exposure before sleep. Drink enough water earlier in the night so your blood stays properly hydrated while you sleep. And if you have symptoms, had risen to catastrophic levels. Doctors later discovered he had skipped his medication for 2 consecutive nights. The morning surge hit his cardiovascular system completely of sleep apnea, loud snoring, morning headaches, constant exhaustion. Please talk to your doctor instead of ignoring it. I also want you to stop thinking of sleep as he survived the stroke, but months later during rehabilitation, Thomas admitted something that haunted him. He said the scariest part was realizing how normal doing nothing, because your body is incredibly active while you sleep. Your heart repairs tissue, your blood vessels regulate pressure, your brain clears metabolic waste. The night had felt before everything changed. No warning, no panic, no feeling that his life was about to split into a before and an after. And that is what makes these hormones rebalance. In many ways, nighttime is when the body fights hardest to keep you alive. And the truth is, you may feel completely normal right now while hidden strain. Nighttime cardiovascular risks are terrifying. Most people don't feel the danger building while they sleep. But there's one final thing doctors say may matter more, is building silently in the background. That is why this matters. Not to scare you, but to help you protect the years you still have ahead of you. Tonight, before you go to then any single habit we have talked about so far. Because protecting the aging heart at night is not about one perfect trick. It is about building a routine that allows the bed. I want you to think carefully about the last 2 hours of your evening routine. Because the habits that feel harmless at night may shape what your heart experiences. Body to finally recover instead of struggle until sunrise. Before sunrise. Your heart has carried you through every moment of your life. The question is whether you will finally give it the recovery it has been asking for every single night. After everything we have talked about, I want you to understand something important. Most nighttime heart attacks and strokes do not happen because the body suddenly fails without. In many cases, the stress has been building quietly for years, night after night. Small habits, small pressures, small warning signs that seemed harmless until one morning. Everything changed. But the good news is that your body is still trying to protect you, even now. Your heart still wants recovery. Your blood vessels still want rest. Your nervous. And in my experience, the final 2 hours before bed may influence that process more than most people realize. That is why many cardiologists and sleep specialists now encourage older adults to build a consistent nighttime routine focused on reducing cardiovascular stress instead of accidentally increasing it. You do not need expensive equipment. You do not need perfection. You need consistency. Try eating your last meal at least 3 hours before bed so the heart is not working overtime to digest heavy food all night. Keep the room cool enough for the body to relax naturally, usually somewhere around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Dim bright lights in the room.